Sandy Munro is going to be here in just a second because last time we talked a few weeks ago, I literally fell out of my chair when he said this.
But then they're going to have something that nobody else has got. They're going to have the hydrogen vehicles, and I think that's ultimately the right way to go. I don't want to carry a battery.
Yeah, he kind of suggested that hydrogen fuel cell cars and vehicles have some sort of a future, topic that I thought we put to rest a long time ago. So let's find out if that's really what he meant or if my hearing aid needs a new battery. Welcome to E4 Electric, a place where Sandy Munro shows up at least once a month, specifically to throw me right out of my chair. If that's not a good enough reason to subscribe, I don't know what is. So go ahead and click on that subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you don't miss any of his appearances moving forward. Now, before I bring Sandy in, a quick reminder that this video and this whole channel is sponsored by Bosley. Are you losing hair like me? Well, you don't have to. I just got my hair transplant last month, but Bosley offers a number of different surgical and non-surgical solutions for you to choose from. Get your free information kit and a discount at bosley.com/e or use the link in the description of this video. And by NeoCharge, if you are a renter having to share a dryer, the NeoCharge Smart Splitter knows how to share. When your dryer is on, your Smart Splitter will stop EV charging and resume it once your laundry is done. Use the discount code in the description of this video to get yours today. Alright, it looks like Sandy is joining Bill Gates, who has recently suggested something very similar, that the semi-trucks and larger utility vehicles may have to run off of the hydrogen fuel cells rather than batteries. Now, I know Elon didn't take that suggestion very well from Bill, but hopefully next time Sandy is visiting Elon in Texas, they have something to talk about. All right, Sandy, we haven't talked in a while, but the last time we talked, you kind of threw me off with a couple of topics, and I must follow up. And this one, we're going to talk about the hydrogen fuel cell cars, which I've strapped myself to the chair, so I won't fall off anymore. Yes.
Well, that's good. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Yes. And by the way, before we start, can I just give you kudos for something? I have watched many interviews with Elon Musk I think there's hours and hours of Joe Rogan, and there was a Third Row Tesla podcast, and I've yet to see anybody ask him honestly tough question that would be good for the community and for the owners, and you were the first one. So kudos for actually, bringing up some, legitimate concerns to him. I that was awesome.
Well, I will tell you, we were there for a long time before we got a chance to see him. We took a tour of SpaceX down there, and they showed us all the manufacturing for the rocket, like the lower section, the stage one. And so we were I was really impressed. But at the end of the day, he seems to be just a real regular kind of guy. I think he's the only American hero. I think he's the only American hero. I can't think of anybody else. And on top of that, he's a normal, everyday kind of guy. He didn't.
Well, it was awesome to see the interview, and I reviewed it on my show. But we are here to talk about something that Elon is not doing, which is he's not building hydrogen fuel cell cars. Which last time we talked, you suggested that they actually have a future, and maybe even a bright future. So, tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, so here's the thing. I believe, first off, that hydrogen is probably not the fuel that I would pick for a car. But if I want to have a semi, if I want to have a VTOL, or I want to have an airplane, I think that hydrogen is a perfect application. I don't think it's good for cars simply because I think that the battery technology is going to be perfect coming up in the very near future. Even if you just look at the 4680 cells right now, I think that they're going to have a long future, and they bring the price down, they bring the cost down, they bring the power density up. Everything about them, to me, is a good idea for a car. But for a truck that has to go up and down hill and carry a load, and on, it doesn't strike me as being the right thing to do. So Elon has his opinion, I have my opinion, and they're not the same opinion. He thinks that he's going to make a truck. I think by the time you put all the batteries you're going to need for that truck, it's going to be too damned heavy, and you won't have any room for payload. And trucks want to be as light as they possibly can so they can, because when they drive in, it's not what's your load weigh, it's what does the truck weigh. And truckers want to have nice, light equipment, safe but light, as light as they can get it, so they can put more onto their truck. And I don't think that's going to work with batteries. But with fuel cells and hydrogen power, I can see taking a great big coupler, pulling out the old, the used or empty hydrogen canisters, shifting over like you would in basically a machine gun. You know, you pull the spent rounds out, and then pop in a new bank. The inside of the truck would grab them, pull them in, lock them all down. You close the door, and away you go. It's faster now than refueling, refueling a truck. And I think that is a really good idea. That's the right way to go.
Okay, so not the passenger cars, but okay, so we're talking about the industrial vehicles. Would you also apply the technology for, like a Cybertruck, like a pickup truck that might be a working truck, or would you still leave those for like the battery?
I think the batteries will do just fine in those types of trucks. I don't see the real. There's no infrastructure right now. The United States will probably be the last to get into hydrogen, and just like they're the last to get into EVs. So, if you're lagging behind, why would you put in two infrastructures at the same time? So I don't think the infrastructure for the auto industry is going to be there. It may change though when people, or when the government discovers that now they have to tax you for electricity, because somebody's got to pay for the roads. And that's when people might look at hydrogen as a different fuel source. But for me, the big trucks and by the way, even with a big truck and you have a fuel cell, you still need a battery pack to light up the fuel cell so that you can get things rolling and whatnot. So you're still going to have some electric power generation. That's going to have to go to the battery in order to run the truck. So
yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. It's kind of funny. We have Tesla here in California, United States, and we are the last kind of country to get into electric cars. And I know that because Will Ferrell told me recently during Super Bowl, actually. All right.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yes, he did. But so let's talk about, before we get to infrastructure, actually, let's talk about, okay, why do you think once we passed a certain weight, I'm assuming, or size of the vehicle, the hydrogen fuel cell technology is superior to the battery technology? What is it about that that is just better?
Well, if you're looking at a heavy truck, okay, Class 8 trucks, then what you're looking at is I want to be as light as I can be. If I have a big heavy engine and a big heavy transmission, I'm not going to be as happy as I could be if I had wheel motors in each one of my wheels, or the wheels that I wanted to get use out of. And I think that my fuel tank for diesel fuel is going to be slightly less than what I'd have if I had a bunch of bottles of hydrogen. They're still going to be, there's still going to be liquid hydrogen, but at the end of the day, they're going to be less. But it's going to give me about the same amount of mileage. That gives me the ability now to shrink the cab. I don't have a big nose on it. I don't have to have a big nose, and I don't have the engine underneath it. So I'm going to have the ability then to carry more load, and that's what those guys want. They want to be able to carry more stuff because that's how they make their living. So on a big truck, to me, that's a piece of cake. It's an easy peasy way to go. It seems to me that that's the right thing to do. If we look at VTOLs, the reason that I like that is because a VTOL does not necessarily, like you could lift off, you could go to a station, drop down, you pick up the canisters that you need, pop it into your VTOL, and away you go. And you get 3, 4, 5, who knows, 1,000 miles out, depending on how many canisters you put in or how the thing is generated. Those things are going to save me a lot of time. I believe that eventually VTOLs will take over, will take the place of cars. And I think it'll probably start in the taxi industry. And that's kind of one of the things that I believe is going to be the reason why we'll suddenly start to get more filling stations, if you want, for hydrogen. That's what's going to make it happen. It's because of the taxi industry, moving me from here to there in a fast and efficient way. And you, well, obviously you live in California. Highways are not your friend in California. Ventura Highway, they write songs about it. I don't know why. Maybe because they get the time. But I had a 4-hour trip to go from my hotel, and I was only 20 miles away from LAX, and I didn't make my plane. I couldn't understand it. But with a VTOL, how long would it take me to go 20 minutes to the airport? That fast, because I'm just going to go up, I'm going to go over, and they're going to drop me basically right by the front door. That kind of stuff is what people are going to want to have. They're going to get tired of trying to figure out how to get to the airport, how to get away from the airport. I don't want to be in a traffic jam. I don't want to be behind a car that's had an accident. And that's what I think is going to be the first step. And the ultra rich, they're going to have them just so that they can get from point A to point B, especially in places like New York and whatnot, where I want to go from my apartment in New York to my office in New York, done. And that's kind of like what I think is the future.
Wow, you just spun off a new topic for our future videos that, VTOLs. By the way, we should mention that VTOL, what is it? Vertical takeoff
and landing.
Yes, there you go. So basically, flying taxis, I believe, they're called. Yeah, I watched Fifth Element. So all right, and now let's get back to the hydrogen fuel cells. Let's talk about the infrastructure. Because, just like you mentioned, we don't have much of it. I mean, Toyota Mirai, and I think there's a Honda hydrogen fuel cell cars, they can all be sold here in California. There's always a shortage, and it doesn't seem like they're adding too many. Do you see this being worth building the infrastructure for the semi-trucks and industrial vehicles to support the hydrogen fuel cell technology?
Like I said, it's going to be a combination between vertical takeoff machines, which will be fuel cells, and the trucks. And I think what you can do there is you can make them like fairly far apart. Now, it's like 300 miles is a long way between charging stations for an electric vehicle. But I think 300 miles for a VTOL will be a big nothing. And for a semi, it's a double big nothing. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to be seeing things pop up, if you like, in not so much for cars, but for the semi industry. As soon as we start to see the big backlash that I'm expecting to see against diesel products, which will be coming down probably somewhere around 2025, 2026, something like that. That's when all of a sudden people are going to say, hey, you know what? We got to do something about this. This is wrong. And when that happens, things will be unfortunate for new diesel products. The reman stuff will probably go on for another 40 years, but it's going to be a big problem for the big organizations that are hanging their hats on diesels.
So, who do you think will actually build this infrastructure, right? With electric cars, obviously was Tesla that built it because they had to. And then, the governments in different countries kind of jumped in. I know our current administration is trying to build something on, alongside. But who do you think will build the hydrogen fuel cell infrastructure? That's a lot of money, a lot of investment. Do you think it will come from a private or the private company from a corporation like Nikola or another one, or do you think this is something that the government will have to do before the technology takes off?
No, I think where it's going to come from is Shell or BP or whomever. Those guys, they have the capability of making things happen. They have the resources. They have the licensees for the stations and whatnot. They would just pick the ones that they wanted to keep and let the other ones die away. And I think that that's who's going to be the guys that are going to make it happen. Now, the government might intercede. They might throw some regulations out there that makes it so it would be beneficial for them to get into the industry. But I believe that the same guys who are in charge of gasoline, diesel fuel, natural gas, whatever. If you do HBT, hydrogen burn technology, then what you can do is you can pull hydrogen out and you wind up with some sludge. I don't know what you do with that, but I can guarantee you that the hydrogen you pull out is a lot less expensive than the little experiment you had in physics where you take two probes and stick it in a bottle of water and, oh look, bubbles are coming up. What is that? And that's kind of like how people think about it. That's expensive, time consuming. That's not going to be the way they're going to do it. But with HPT and natural gas, I believe that that'll actually. There are some people who have made combinations where they've just taken natural gas and pulled the hydrogen out and let the ingredients that they don't need either go into the atmosphere, which I'm not really a fan of, or they collect them in bottles, and you collect the bottles and then break it down and do something else with it. So I believe that that's kind of the way it's going to go.
So at the end of the day, no matter what, we'll continue giving our money to Chevron and Shell. Great. That's great future for us.
That's me, Mr. Happy here.
Wow,
I'm just here to make you happy. But I think that the industry, that part of the energy industry is going to shrink a smidge, and they'll have to have something to do, and that'll be the way they'll do it.
Okay, so let's talk about safety, right? Because these could actually have some, obviously they can push these trucks for hundreds of thousands of miles, but they can also create some spectacular fireworks, right?
Well, it's not really spectacular. It's over in a flash.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's true. Well, so
so long, Mama.
Well, it's a bit of a concern, right? We know what happens when a Tesla runs into a stationary truck or or Hyundai gets caught on fire. One or two incidents, and everybody, all of a sudden doesn't trust the cars. How are we on safety on this? I mean, is this a pretty safe technology, at least to keep cars from, exploding? Or do you think this technology has some risks because of how bad these accidents could be?
Well, here's the thing. Anytime that you've got energy in a bottle, whether it's gasoline, diesel fuel, jet engines, batteries, or hydrogen bottles, you have the potential of having some kind of an issue. Now the hydrogen bottles that Toyota is using on the Mirai, they're very difficult to break. I mean, I can't imagine how they would. I mean, if you shot one with a high velocity rifle, yeah, you'd go into it and the hydrogen will leak out. But then you'd also need a spark. It's the same thing as you crush a gas tank. that stuff flowing all over the roadway now has a lot of potential energy. A lot can go wrong. And I mean, Hollywood, they make these spectacular explosions all the time, saying, look what happens to a car when it goes over a cliff. Doesn't happen normally that way, but it shows you that, you know, people think that, yes, gasoline can be a big deal. All of them can. It's just the way energy is. But you need a combination of things to make it happen. And yes, there were some people that got really upset about Tesla vehicles that caught on fire. But you know what? The press lays off that after a while. They go and find some other bleeding body to go after. And that's kind of the way it works. But I don't think it's a real big deal. I think that any time that you've got engineers that know what they're doing and have a first and foremost on their mind is safety, you're always going to have something that's going to be not a problem. Not a problem at all.
All right. Now, here's a problem. Because companies like Tesla and Daimler, and I think I just recently, last year I test drove the Volvo's prototype of their semi. You know, they all are going with the battery-powered, semi-trucks. What's going to happen to them? I mean, what's going to happen to the Tesla semi-truck? Do you think they'll just have to kind of push through and try to compete with the upcoming hydrogen fuel cell technology? Or do you think at some point they'll be like, we're going to have to change our minds, which is hard to do with Elon, I think. What do you think the future of the sort of existing direction that Tesla and others are going, what's going to happen to that?
Okay, so I'm old, so I got a chance to see a lot of things. And I remember cars that were going to have jet engines in them, turbine engines. Didn't work. Chrysler and a bunch of other companies, they spent a lot of money, made some really cool looking prototypes, spent a lot of millions of dollars basically to try and get this technology to work. It didn't work, and they gave up and threw it away. I've seen other things like the Ford Levacar. That was pretty amazing. That went away. Other types of vehicles that maybe even sometimes got into production, like the Etzel, that didn't work real well. Push button transmissions, all kinds of things that car companies tried and didn't work, and then they just moved on. And that's kind of like what you have to do if you're in this kind of a business. You take risks, you keep your fingers crossed, and if it didn't work out, then okay, fine, let's find something else. That's kind of the way it works in the auto industry. Now, the thing I know about Mercedes is that they're going after solid-state batteries. Now, solid-state batteries aren't as heavy as the batteries that you'd find like a 4680 or a 2170 or a pouch or a whatever prismatic. They're not as heavy. So if they're not as heavy, I'm still going to lose some of my load, but it might be good enough to use as a short-run vehicle. When you start to get to Class 8 trucks, then I don't see that being it. I will tell you one thing that I did think was interesting, though. We watched as we were driving through the mountains, actually trying to get to SpaceX in Texas. When we were driving through the mountains, we noticed quite a number of trucks that were in the ditch or at the side of the road. And the reason for that was because their brakes failed or they didn't have the energy to make that last oomph up the hill. And that's where I think there's a potential. I believe that they should have a battery pack with wheel motors, so that when you are cruising up there using your diesel engine and whatnot, and you've got to the point where your torque curve is like diminishing quickly, then the electric motor should kick in and get you up the rest of the hill. And when you're going down the hill, you turn on your regen brakes, and now you don't have to worry about brake fade, because that's what was going on with most of the guys that were on the side of the road. Their brakes failed. So they had to pull over on the side of the road, and they have a a section where they can slide onto and drive themselves into a deadhead, and that can't be much fun either. But with regen brakes, it's not like your brake is going to fail, because it isn't a brake. It's you're driving a generator, or you're driving an electric motor backwards, and it's sucking up the energy of you going down that hill and putting it into the battery. So giving you something that you need on the other side of the hill. So you use up the battery going up the hill to get you to the top and around in a hurry. And then when you go over the top, your regen brakes are charging the battery. I think for that short distance, there's a real opportunity. But long haul, forget it. I don't buy it for a second.
All right, well, let me ask you the last question then. When do you think it will be obvious to, let's say, Tesla and Daimler and Volvo and so forth, that they have to change course? Obviously infrastructure is going to play, some role in it, but any estimate, a year or two, or 5 to 10?
Maybe 3 to 5 years. And the reason is going to be that truck drivers, the guys that drive trucks, the guys that own these things, they look for, number one, is it cheap? Number two, is it reliable? Number three, how is this going to be different than what I've got right now? And those three characteristics, those three things in a row equals how much money am I going to make? Because if it weighs too much, I don't make as much money. If it costs too much, I'm not going to make it. It's going to be a longer time for payback. If the materials that I'm using, if the fuel I'm using or whatever is too expensive, down goes my profits. Everything is going to have to do with the commercial success associated with these long-haul trucking companies. And I believe, as I think I've mentioned before, that the government is going to try and say, hey, how are we going to afford the roads after people stop buying gasoline? Right now, you can charge your car for about $11, and if you fill it up with gasoline, it's going to be about $45. But what happens when the government starts taxing your electricity for your electric vehicle? Okay, so right now, people can probably say, hey, well, I mean, you're going to only spend about a third of the money in fuel as what you're doing. Fuel's a big deal, but not a really big deal. But hey, that's going to drop the price for fuel consumption. Okay, that's good. Now, let's go to the next point. What happens when the government starts taxing electricity? What happens when it's at parity? Who's going to be thinking then? Trucking companies and guys who own their own trucks, they're very conservative kind of people. They're not going to just jump right in and sign up for an electric vehicle. First off, because they don't really understand it, and secondly, because how do I make money with this thing? It's all going to boil down to the commercial aspects.
All right, you know what? I have to admit, when I was starting the interview, I was like, oh my God, what is Sandy going to say? I mean, this is insane. But it actually all made sense.
Really? I've done it again.
I know.
Totally confused you.
Yes. No, this does make sense. You've dumbed it up enough even for me to understand. And that, my friend, is an achievement. So I appreciate you hanging out once again with me. And I will see you next time for another exciting topic.
Absolutely. Okay, Alex, stay healthy. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I got my shot, so I'm healthy now. You don't have to worry about me giving you COVID or anything like that.
You only give me elevated blood pressure, but not COVID.
Yeah.
So you got your second shot, right? Or just the first one yet?
No, that's the first. The next one is coming in on St. Patrick's Day. Now, in my household, even though we weren't Irish, it was close enough to a beer fest. So hopefully we're going to be able to get a shot and then go out for some green beer or something.
All right. And that means we can probably meet sooner than later.
Probably. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully I will see you soon.
You will. Bye-bye, Alex.
Now, if you're wondering what to watch next, how about my conversation with Sandy that we had about the battery-powered cars that are coming out this year in 2021. He had a lot to say about those. Of course, I linked to that video in the description of this one. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to his channel. And I put that one there as well. All right, looking forward to all of your comments. Other than that, see you guys next time. And remember to stay charged.